Selfish! You never cared about us! How dare you do that to me?
My daughter showed up at my door with nothing left. She'd sold her house, handed over $500,000 to her husband, and 2 weeks later, it was all gone. When I refused to let them in, he punched me in the face. But what he didn't know was that single punch would cost him everything. My name is Henry Thompson, and at 63, I had spent 4 decades building a life defined by discipline, control, and hard-earned success. I wasn't the kind of man who believed in luck. I believed in patterns, decisions, and consequences. Tall, slightly broad-shouldered with silver hair always combed neatly back, I carried myself with quiet authority. People often said my calm demeanor made me hard to read, but that calm came from years of surviving betrayal, including a brutal divorce 15 years ago that taught me one thing: trust must be earned, not given. That evening in Chicago, the wind rattled against my front windows as I poured myself a glass of bourbon. The house was quiet, too quiet. It had been that way ever since my daughter moved out years ago. Then came the knock. 3 sharp hits. I opened the door, and everything changed. Standing there was Olivia Thompson, my only daughter. 28 years old, slim, pale, with long brown hair now tangled and lifeless. She used to be vibrant, confident, the kind of woman who could walk into any room and own it. But now, her eyes were sunken, rimmed with red, her hands trembling as if she hadn't slept in days. Olivia had always been soft-hearted, easily trusting, something she inherited from her late mother. It made her kind, but dangerously vulnerable. Behind her stood Ethan Carter, her husband. 32, tall, athletic build, sharp jawline, always dressed like someone trying too hard to look successful. Tonight, his jacket was wrinkled, his posture restless. Ethan had always been charming on the surface, too charming. The kind of man who smiled with his mouth but never with his eyes. I had noticed it years ago, but I had ignored it. For her. "Dad," Olivia's voice cracked. "Please, we need help." Ethan stepped forward, raising his hands slightly in a controlled gesture. "Henry, we just hit a rough patch. Nothing we can't fix. We just need a place to stay. A couple of weeks, that's it." I didn't answer immediately. I studied them. Olivia's fingers were clasped tightly together like she was praying. Ethan's eyes? They were scanning the house behind me. "What happened?" I asked. Olivia swallowed hard. We sold the house." My grip tightened on the doorframe. "You sold it?" "For $500,000, Ethan jumped in quickly. "We reinvested it. High-growth digital assets. It's temporary." "It's gone," Olivia whispered. Silence. The wind outside howled louder, like it was echoing what I already knew. "Gone?" I repeated slowly. Ethan exhaled sharply, irritation flickering across his face. "Look, that's not the point. These things happen. We just need support right now." Support. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, and then I made the decision that would change everything. "No." Olivia's face collapsed. "Dad, please." I said no. Ethan's expression darkened instantly. "You're seriously going to turn your back on your own family?" he said, his voice tightening. "I'm not turning my back," I replied, my tone cold, controlled. "I'm refusing to enable bad decisions." That's when something shifted in him. The mask slipped. The moment the doors slammed shut behind them, the silence felt heavier than before. My hand was still resting on the handle, my pulse steady, but my instincts were not. Something about Ethan's eyes, right before he turned away, lingered in my mind like a warning. I didn't wait. I walked straight to my study, picked up my phone, and called the one man I trusted when things stopped making sense, Daniel Brooks. Daniel was 55, tall and lean with sharp features that gave him a permanent look of focus. His salt and pepper hair was always slightly unkempt, like he cared more about solving problems than appearances. He had built a reputation as one of the most meticulous attorneys in Chicago. But what most people didn't know was that Daniel had once lost a major client to a financial scam early in his career, an event that hardened him. Since then, he never ignored red flags. He answered on the second ring. "Henry." His voice was calm, but alert. "You don't call this late unless something's wrong." "There is," I said. "I need you to dig into Ethan Carter." There was a pause, then Daniel exhaled slowly. "I was hoping you'd say that." My grip tightened around the phone. "What does that mean?" "It means," he said carefully, You're not the first person to raise concerns about him. That was when I knew this wasn't just a bad decision. Come to my office tomorrow morning, Daniel continued. There are things I shouldn't say over the phone. Before I could respond, another voice cut in faintly on his end. Daniel, I found the file you asked for. That was Rachel Kim, Daniel's assistant. Late 20s, petite, always dressed in clean, professional lines. She had sharp eyes behind thin-framed glasses and a mind that missed nothing. Rachel had a background in forensic accounting. She used to track financial irregularities for a private firm before joining Daniel. Quiet, efficient, and relentless when something didn't add up. Put it on my desk, Daniel said to her, then back to me. Henry, you need to be careful tonight. The line went dead. I didn't sleep. Instead, I sat in the living room, lights off, watching the reflection of my house in the window. Around 2 a.m., something caught my attention. A car, parked across the street, engine off, lights off. But it hadn't been there earlier. I stood still, watching. 10 minutes passed. The car didn't move. That's when I reached for another number. Marcus Hale. Marcus was 67, retired Chicago police detective. Broad-shouldered, thick gray mustache. The kind of man who looked like he'd seen too much and trusted too little. We'd met years ago through a business dispute that turned criminal. He'd helped uncover a fraud case for me. Since then, we stayed in touch. Marcus didn't scare easily. He answered with a grunt. This better be important. I think I'm being watched. Silence. Then his tone changed instantly. Tell me everything. I described the car, the position, the timing. Marcus didn't interrupt. When I finished, he said quietly, Don't approach it. Don't turn on your lights. Just stay inside. You think it's connected? I don't believe in coincidences, he replied, especially not ones that show up right after family drama. I glanced back at the window. The car was still there. Henry, Marcus added, his voice low, controlled. Whatever your son-in-law is into, it's bigger than you think. For the first time that night, I felt it. Not fear, recognition. This wasn't over. It had just begun. I arrived at Daniel's office just after sunrise, the city still shaking off the quiet of early morning. His firm occupied the top floor of a glass building downtown. Clean, controlled, just like him. He didn't waste time. Daniel stood by the window when I walked in, sleeves rolled up, a thick folder already laid out on his desk. Rachel sat nearby, typing rapidly, her posture straight, her eyes focused like she was dissecting something piece by piece. Sit down, Henry, Daniel said. I did. He slid the folder toward me. Inside were photographs, different women, different places, same man, Ethan, but not always Ethan. That's not his only name, Daniel said calmly. We've tracked at least 4 aliases. Rachel spoke up, her voice precise. Ethan Carter, Evan Cross, Daniel Reed, and once he used the name Lucas Grant. Same pattern every time. New identity, new target. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Targets? I asked. Daniel tapped one of the photos. An older woman stood beside Ethan, smiling, elegant, unaware. This is Margaret Whitmore, he said. 71, widow, owned multiple properties. 2 years ago, she liquidated a large portion of her assets. Rachel reached into the folder and pulled out a worn, leather-bound notebook. She kept a journal, Rachel explained. Her daughter gave us access after everything collapsed. She opened it carefully, flipping to a marked page. Listen to this, she said. Her voice softened slightly as she read. He says the future is digital, that I'm lucky to be part of something early. I trust him. He looks at me like I matter, like I still have time to build something new. Rachel closed the journal slowly. 3 months later, she continued, Margaret lost nearly everything. The company didn't exist. Daniel leaned forward. And that's not an isolated case. He spread more photos across the table. Another woman, mid-50s, confident posture. This is Linda Garvey, Daniel said. Former boutique owner, same story. Revolutionary tech startup. She invested everything. Rachel added. She told investigators later that Ethan, under the name Evan, isolated her from her friends, made her believe only he understood her vision. I stared at the table. Every face looked the same, hopeful, then ruined. So he targets older women? I asked. Daniel shook his head slightly. He targets vulnerability, he corrected. Age just makes it easier. Rachel leaned forward, her eyes sharp. There's more. She pulled out a printed document, transaction records. These accounts, they don't lead to one person. They split, routed through multiple shell companies. Daniel nodded. That suggests something important. He's not working alone, I said. Exactly. The room fell quiet for a moment. Then Daniel pointed to another detail. We also found overlapping timelines, he said. While he was involved with Margaret, he was already setting up contact with Linda. He overlaps his targets, Rachel added. And in some cases, the funds disappear into accounts that require multiple authorizations. I looked up. A group, I said. Daniel met my eyes. That's our working theory. Whew. My mind raced back to last night. The car, the stillness, the feeling of being watched. This wasn't random, I muttered. No, Daniel said quietly. It never is. Rachel closed the folder. Henry, she said, her tone softer now. Your daughter fits the exact profile. Emotional trust, financial access, close proximity to a larger asset. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. I leaned back in my chair, the weight of it pressing down on me. Ethan hadn't just walked into my daughter's life. He had selected her. And if Daniel was right, this wasn't over. It was escalating. The word pattern stayed with me all the way home. Not fear, pattern. I'd built my life reading them, predicting outcomes before they unfolded. And now, everything about Ethan fit too perfectly into one. By the time I pulled into my driveway, the same car from last night was gone. That didn't make me feel better. It made me feel watched and patient. Inside the house, I didn't pour a drink. I didn't touch anything in the kitchen. Instead, I walked straight to the security panel mounted beside the hallway and pulled up the camera archive. I rarely used it. Installed it years ago after a burglary scare, then forgot about it. But now, it mattered. I rewound to the past few weeks. At first, nothing. Then I saw her, Olivia. She stood in my kitchen from a visit I barely remembered, moving quietly, her posture tense. She was preparing coffee. I leaned closer to the screen. Her movements were careful, almost hesitant. Then someone stepped into frame behind her. Ethan. He said something. I couldn't hear it, but Olivia paused. Then slowly, she reached into her bag and took something out, a small bottle. My chest tightened. She hesitated, then poured it into the cup. I froze. Not anger, not yet. Recognition. I didn't wait. Within the hour, I was sitting across from Dr. Samuel Patterson, my private physician. 60 years old, African American, tall, lean, with calm eyes that had seen decades of patients lie, panic, and deny. He spoke softly, but there was a firmness behind it, like someone who didn't need to raise his voice to be taken seriously. I had trusted him for over 10 years. Henry, he said, adjusting his glasses as he reviewed the lab report. These levels didn't appear overnight. What am I looking at? He tapped the page. Low doses of sedatives, mild but consistent. Something designed to make you slower, less alert, more suggestible. For how long? He looked up. At least 2 months. I sat back, absorbing it. That's why, I muttered. The fatigue, the fog. Dr. Patterson nodded. You probably dismissed it as stress, age. That's how this works. Could I have noticed? Not easily. That's the point. I didn't respond, because I already knew. Back home, I replayed the footage again, frame by frame. Olivia's face, confusion, hesitation, then compliance. She didn't know, I said out loud. Or maybe she didn't want to know. That evening, I called Marcus. I have confirmation, I told him. I've been drugged. There was no surprise in his voice. By him? Through her. A pause. Then Marcus sighed. That's how guys like him operate. They don't just manipulate victims. They weaponize the people closest to them. I looked back at the screen. Olivia standing there, holding that cup. She hesitated, I said quietly. Yeah, Marcus replied, which means there's still something left of her. And if there isn't, then you're not dealing with two people anymore, he said. You're dealing with a system. Later that night, I stood alone in my kitchen. Same counter, same lighting, same place where it had happened. I poured a glass of water and didn't drink it. For the first time in a long time, I didn't trust my own home. But something else had changed too. Before, I was reacting. Now, I was thinking ahead. Because if Ethan had gone this far, then he wasn't planning to stop, and neither was I. I didn't call Olivia. I waited. If there was one thing I had learned from business, and from people like Ethan, it was this. Pressure reveals truth faster than confrontation. It didn't take long. The next afternoon, I heard a car pull into the driveway. I already knew who it was. When I opened the door, Olivia was standing there alone. She looked worse than before. Her hair was pulled back hastily, dark circles under her eyes, shoulders slightly hunched, like she was carrying something invisible but heavy. She used to stand straight, confident. Now she avoided eye contact. "Dad, can we talk?" she asked. Her voice was softer than I remembered, careful, almost rehearsed. I stepped aside and let her in. We sat across from each other in the living room, same place she used to sit as a teenager, arguing about curfews. Now she folded her hands tightly in her lap. "I know yesterday was bad," she started. "Ethan didn't mean stop." She froze. I leaned forward slightly. "Before you say anything else," I said calmly, "I want you to answer one question." She nodded, slowly. "Did you put something in my drink?" Her breath caught. Just for a second, then she looked away. I don't know what you're talking about." There it was. Not denial, deflection. "Olivia," I said quietly, "I have security footage." Her head snapped back toward me. Panic flickered across her face. He told me it was just supplements," she said quickly, words rushing out. "Something to help with stress, with your sleep. He said you needed it." "He told you," I repeated. She nodded. Her voice broke slightly. "He said you were getting worse, that you were forgetting things, that you were stubborn and wouldn't take help unless I did something." I watched her carefully. Every word matched the pattern. Isolation, doubt, control. "And you believed him." She swallowed hard. "He's my husband." "No," I said firmly. "He's your manipulator." Her expression hardened instantly. That was new. "You don't understand him," she snapped. "You never did. You've always looked down on him." "I looked through him," I corrected. She shook her head, standing up abruptly. "You're doing exactly what he said you would." I didn't move. "What did he say?" I asked. "That you'd twist everything," she replied. "That you'd try to turn me against him. That you'd make him look like the bad guy because you can't control me anymore." I let that sit. Ethan had prepared her. Every response, every reaction, preloaded. "And the money?" I asked. "The 500,000? Her jaw tightened. "It's not gone," she said quickly. "It's tied up. Investments take time." "That's what he told you." "It's what I know." "No," I said, my voice lowering. "It's what you've been trained to repeat." Her eyes flashed. "You're wrong." I studied her for a moment, then reached into my drawer and pulled out a document Daniel had given me earlier that morning. I slid it across the table. "Then explain this." She hesitated, then picked it up. As her eyes moved across the page, the color drained from her face. This isn't..." "It's a loan agreement," I said. $75,000, taken out in your name." "It's already been processed." Her hands started shaking. "That's not possible." "It is," I said, "and you're liable for it." She looked up at me, confusion breaking through the script for the first time. "I didn't sign that." I held her gaze. "Did you sign anything he gave you?" Silence. Then, "Yes." The word came out barely above a whisper. I nodded slowly. "That's how it starts." Her breathing quickened. No, Ethan wouldn't. He already has." She stepped back, shaking her head, trying to hold on to something that was already collapsing. "You're lying," she said louder now. "You're making this up to scare me. I'm trying to save you." "I don't need saving." Her voice cracked. For a moment I saw it. Doubt. Real doubt. Then it vanished, replaced by something colder. "If I have to choose," she said slowly, "I choose him." The words landed harder than anything else. I didn't react. I just nodded once. "Then you've made your decision." She stared at me, waiting, for anger, for pleading. I gave her neither. "Leave," I said quietly. She hesitated at the door, just for a second, then she walked out, and this time, she didn't look back. I didn't chase Olivia. I didn't call. Instead, I did what I had always done best. I planned. By the next morning, I was back in Daniel's office. The atmosphere had changed. No more speculation. Now it was strategy. Daniel stood behind his desk, sleeves rolled higher than usual, eyes sharper. Rachel sat beside him, already organizing documents into neat stacks. Marcus leaned against the wall, arms crossed, silent but alert. And there was someone new, Agent Claire Donovan. Early 40s, tall, athletic build, blonde hair pulled tightly into a low bun. Her posture was straight, almost military, and her gaze carried the kind of quiet authority that didn't need introduction. She wore a simple navy suit, but everything about her said control. Later, I would learn she had spent over a decade in financial crimes, specializing in fraud networks that operated across state lines. Calm, precise, and ruthless when needed. "Mr. Thompson," she said, offering a brief nod. "We've been tracking patterns similar to Ethan's for a while. So you know about him?" "Not yet enough to arrest him," she replied, "but enough to recognize escalation." Daniel stepped in. "Which is why we need him to make a mistake. I already knew where this was going." "You want to bait him?" Agent Donovan met my eyes. "We want him to expose intent. Right now, everything he's done sits in a gray zone. Manipulation, influence. But if he actively moves to take your assets under false pretenses, that's different." I leaned back slightly. "And you think he will?" Rachel answered this time. "Based on his pattern, he won't walk away empty-handed. Not after losing control over Olivia." Marcus added quietly, "Guys like him don't quit. They double down." Silence settled for a moment. Then I nodded. "Tell me the plan." 3 days later, everything was in motion. I made the call myself. "Olivia," I said when she answered, keeping my voice slower, softer than usual. "I've been thinking." A pause, then cautious hope. "About what?" "About helping you," I said. Another pause, longer this time. "I shouldn't have shut you out," I continued. Maybe I overreacted. That was the first lie, but it was necessary." The meeting was set for the following evening, not at my house, at a neutral location, Daniel's suggestion. A private office space rented under a different name, controlled, contained, and prepared. The man who greeted Ethan and Olivia there wasn't Daniel. It was Gregory Mills, late 50s, average height, slightly overweight, with thinning hair and a soft, forgettable face. The kind of man people overlooked, and that was exactly why he was perfect. Gregory was a former corporate negotiator who now worked with Daniel on sensitive cases. He had a talent for playing roles, adjusting his tone, his posture, even his personality to match whatever the situation required. Tonight, he was the independent attorney. Ethan walked in first, confident, too confident. He wore a tailored suit this time, clean, sharp, like he had something to prove. But his eyes, those same eyes, moved quickly, scanning the room, calculating exits, angles. Olivia followed behind him, quieter, her posture tense. "Mr. Thompson," Ethan said, extending his hand. I didn't take it. "I've reconsidered," I said simply. His smile widened. "I knew you would." Of course he did. Gregory stepped in smoothly. "If we're all ready," he said, gesturing toward the table, "we can begin discussing the asset transfer." There it was. No hesitation, no caution, straight to the point. Agent Donovan's voice echoed in my mind. "He will escalate." Ethan leaned forward, resting his hands on the table. "We've already prepared a structure," he said. "It's the fastest way to protect your estate and grow it at the same time." Rachel had been right. He wasn't backing off. He was accelerating. I glanced briefly toward the corner of the room. Nothing visible, but I knew. They were watching, recording, waiting. Ethan slid a folder toward me. "Just sign here," he said. Too easy, too fast, too desperate. I picked up the pen, and for the first time since this began, I smiled. Because the trap was no longer being set. It was closing. I held the pen above the paper just long enough to let Ethan believe he had already won. His eyes were locked on my hand, anticipation barely hidden behind that polished smile. Olivia stood beside him, silent, her fingers gripping the edge of the table like she needed something to hold on to. Gregory cleared his throat softly. "Whenever you're ready, Mr. Thompson." I lowered the pen, then stopped. "Before I sign," I said calmly, "I have one question." Ethan's smile tightened slightly. "Of course. Where exactly is the money going?" A flicker, just a flicker, passed through his eyes. Then confidence returned. "Into a secured investment structure," he replied smoothly. "Protected accounts, offshore for tax efficiency." "Offshore," I repeated. He nodded. "Standard practice." I leaned back slightly, setting the pen down. "Good," I said, "because now we know exactly where to look." The door behind him opened. Fast, precise, no hesitation. 3 people stepped in. Agent Donovan was first, no longer subtle, no longer quiet. "Ethan Carter," she said, her voice sharp and controlled. "You're under arrest for fraud, financial manipulation, and conspiracy." Everything froze. For a second, just one. Then Ethan moved. Too fast, too desperate. He stepped back, eyes darting, calculating exits that no longer existed. "You've got nothing," he snapped. "This is a civil matter. You can't—" "Sit down," Marcus's voice cut in from behind him. Marcus stood in the doorway now, broader than before, presence filling the space like a wall. Ethan hesitated. That was enough. 2 agents moved in, cuffs out, metal clicked, and just like that, the predator was caught. Olivia didn't move. She stood there, staring at Ethan like she was seeing him for the first time. "Ethan," her voice trembled, "what is this?" He didn't answer, didn't even look at her. That was the moment it broke. Not the arrest, not the evidence, the silence. Agent Donovan stepped forward, placing a folder on the table. "Olivia Thompson," she said, her tone softer now, "you need to see this." Inside were documents, transaction records, multiple names, multiple women, photos, dates, patterns. Rachel stepped closer, opening another file. "These are statements from previous victims," she said gently. "Margaret Whitmore, Linda Garvey, and 3 others." As if on cue, the door opened again. 3 women entered. Different ages, different lives, same expression. Margaret Whitmore's daughter, Elaine Whitmore, was first. Mid-40s, tall, composed, but with eyes that carried years of anger. She had inherited her mother's strength, but also her loss. Next was Linda Garvey herself. Late 50s, shorter, shoulders slightly hunched now, like the weight of what she'd lost never fully left. Her voice, when she spoke, was quiet, but steady. "He told me the same things," she said, looking directly at Olivia. "Every word." The third woman, Sarah Klein, early 50s, sharp features, arms crossed tightly, didn't speak at all. She just watched Ethan, with a hatred that didn't need words. Olivia's breathing became uneven. No, this isn't real." "It is," I said quietly. She turned to me, eyes wide. "You knew?" "I suspected," I answered. "Now I know." Agent Donovan nodded toward one of her team. "All offshore accounts connected to these transactions have been frozen," she announced. "Every transfer, every shell company, we have it." Ethan laughed, but there was no confidence left in it. "You think this ends here?" he said bitterly. "There are people you don't even know about." Agent Donovan stepped closer. "Then we'll find them too." He didn't respond, because for the first time, he had nothing left to say. Olivia staggered back slightly, one hand covering her mouth. All the scripts, all the lies, gone. Her voice cracked. "I didn't know." I looked at her, and for once, I believed her. But belief didn't change reality. The damage was done. And as Ethan was led out of the room in handcuffs, I realized something else. This wasn't victory, not yet. It was just the moment the truth finally surfaced. The room emptied slowly after the arrest, but Olivia didn't move. She stood there like something inside her had finally collapsed. Her shoulders shook, her breathing uneven, like she was trying to hold together pieces that no longer fit. I had seen people lose money before. I had seen people lose businesses. But this was different. This was someone realizing they had lost themselves. She sank into the chair beside her, her hands covering her face. "I believed him," she whispered. "Every word." I didn't step closer. Not yet. "You didn't just believe him," I said quietly. "You trusted him more than yourself." That hurt her, but it was the truth. 2 weeks later, Olivia was sitting in a small office across from Dr. Emily Carter, a licensed therapist in her early 40s. Emily was tall, slender, with soft brown hair and calm, observant eyes that seemed to notice everything without judgment. Years ago, she had worked with victims of financial abuse, especially those manipulated by partners. It had made her patient, but firm when it mattered. I don't even know what was real anymore, Olivia said during one session, her voice fragile. That's normal, Emily replied gently. People like Ethan don't just steal money, they rewrite your reality. Olivia nodded slowly, tears forming, but this time she didn't hide them. It was the first sign she was starting to face it. Meanwhile, Ethan Carter sat behind reinforced glass in a federal holding facility. His appearance had changed. No tailored suits, no controlled posture. Just a man in a gray uniform, restless, eyes still searching for angles that no longer existed. Across from him sat Assistant U.S. Attorney Ryan Keller, a man in his mid-30s, sharp-featured, clean-cut, known for building airtight financial crime cases. Ryan had built his career taking down fraud networks that operated in legal gray zones, calm, methodical, and relentless. You're looking at multiple charges, Ryan said evenly. Fraud, identity theft, conspiracy. Ethan smirked faintly. You think I'm the only one? Ryan leaned forward slightly. No, but you're the one we caught. For the first time, Ethan didn't respond. 3 months passed. I stood in a renovated office space downtown. New walls, clean lines, purpose-built. On the glass behind me were simple words, Thompson Foundation. It wasn't about business anymore. It was about pattern interruption. Rachel had helped set up the financial structure. Daniel handled the legal framework. Marcus occasionally stopped by, offering insight in that quiet way of his. The foundation focused on one thing, helping victims of financial manipulation rebuild before it was too late. It wasn't charity, it was correction. Olivia visited for the first time on a quiet afternoon. She looked different, still thinner than before, but steadier. Her posture wasn't as collapsed. Her eyes, while still tired, were clearer. I heard about this place, she said softly, glancing around. It's not for you, I replied. She nodded. I know. That mattered. We stood there for a moment, father and daughter, separated by choices that couldn't be undone. I'm working again, she added. Small job, nothing big. Good, I said. No praise, no rescue, just acknowledgement. She didn't ask for money. She didn't ask to come back home, and I didn't offer. Because this time, it had to be different. As she walked toward the door, she paused. I'm not expecting things to go back to how they were, she said quietly. They won't, I replied. She nodded once, accepting it. And for the first time since all of this began, there was no illusion left between us, just truth. And maybe, over time, something new could grow from it. Not what we had before, but something real. I didn't just lose money. I almost lost my daughter too. But sometimes, protecting yourself means letting others face the consequences of their choices. So tell me, if you were me, what would you do? Would you forgive and help her start over, or walk away to protect everything you built? Is family everything, or are there lines that should never be crossed? Leave your answer in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more powerful stories like this.